G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this video is a discussion about MCNs. MCN stands for multi-channel network. Now I actually did a video on MCNs that I didn't release on this channel because it was filled with colourful language and I got a little bit too aggressive, admittedly. That might be because in my opinion MCNs are the snake oil salesman of YouTube. That being said, it's about 6 months since I recorded my initial MCN video. I'm cooling my temper a little bit and I'm going to use this video as an opportunity to try and be as informative as possible and channel my bias and distaste into dry sarcastic humour instead of rage and curse-filled language. If you haven't noticed already, I have some pretty strong opinions, so keep that in mind. What is a multi-channel network? In brackets, supposed to be. Well, a Wikipedia quote that I looked up 5 minutes ago says that they are designed to negate the hassle involved when seeking out your own advertising opportunities on the site. The site being YouTube. Now I'm going to try and break this down to be as straightforward to you as possible. MCNs have representatives or salespeople that approach YouTubers and give a little bit of a sales pitch, making certain promises and trying to encourage people to join their network. The idea of the MCN is that it offers a community to YouTubers to collaborate with each other, to have better ad revenue and sales opportunities with brands, to get better CPMs. Now with the aid of the vanilla definition I just read out to you and with years of experience whereupon I've been approached by literally hundreds of multi-channel networks, I'm going to present to you a little bit of a stock standard package or sales pitch that you hear from most multi-channel networks. Our multi-channel network is the biggest and best in the universe. Our network consists of over 2 gajillion members and we have superstars like Menajarbles and Dupina. We can bring you collaboration opportunities with other successful YouTubers on our network, and our network can bring you huge exposure. We can bring you much higher CPMs than Google can, which of course in return brings you a lot more money. See, Google caps their CPMs at about $2 to $3 per user, but our network doesn't have that restriction, which means we can get up to and over $5 to $10 to $20 CPM per you. We can help you polish and optimize your channel and content and help you get found. We only take 25% of your ad revenue in exchange for which we help you become the next YouTube superstar. Also, if you don't like the network, you can leave at any time. Actually, that all sounds pretty impressive, right? I mean, it does sound pretty appealing and it's very flattering. The reality is a lot of YouTubers get suckered into joining MCNs because of opening speeches like this. And because the salespeople tend to be very easy to talk to and very accessible. I'm going to break it down for you and take all of these points presented in that little package and sort of translate it and give you my own perspective and experience. We're a huge network with superstars. Translation, we have the equivalent of about 10,000 YouTubers to 1 employee in our office, who of course, aside from not being able to give you time and attention because of all those people, is spending a lot of their time really focusing on the YouTube superstars that we want to keep signed onto our network. Here's a funny story. Last year, I went to the offices, the headquarters of a very large multi-channel network. I was very kindly accommodated and given a guided tour of their offices. Now, for the sake of privacy, I'm not going to disclose any names, but I will say that the network's name rhymes with Baker, and they were recently bought out by a very large company that rhymes with Schmizni. So we walk around and have the tour and it was very nice. It was cool seeing their facilities and whatnot. But the interesting thing is the resources and facilities that they brag about being able to offer their YouTubers doesn't even equate to what YouTube itself offers YouTubers everywhere that aren't signed to an MCN. Beyond that, there was in the conversation a bit of a bragging moment about numbers. We have so many people on our network and we have so and so fancy people on our network. That's not a persuasive argument. Because I was in an office with a couple of hundred people, and when they're bragging about hundreds of thousands of people on their network, you only do the maths to realize that most of those people aren't getting any time or attention. The problem is they're really likable and they put the hard sell on you. And in fact, at the time, there were other YouTubers that I knew and some I was traveling with that had also met with Baker that week. Some people were given fancy rides or offered dinners, and some people even got a trip to Schmisneyland. Anything to get someone to sign a piece of paper. Now, when the hard sell was being put on me, I actually put a bit of a hard return on them. I told them I'm not willing to rule anything out without looking at it, so of course if you send me the best contract you have, I'd be happy to look at it and continue a discussion and tell you what my thoughts are. They might have sensed my skepticism because I never heard from them again. Tear. We can get you collaborations, just like you can, for yourself, without our help. Networks like to make it seem that there's a barrier of communication between you and other YouTubers. That the YouTubers on their network that they brag about who might be doing what you're doing but are more popular are unattainable without going through them. It's the internet. There is nothing stopping you from tweeting them and saying, hey, I want to make a video. And guess what? No one can stop you, even the network. The reality is if you're a fledgling channel starting out, you're not going to be any more likely to be appealing to a larger YouTuber as far as collaboration goes, whether you're in or outside of a network. If you're starting off, you should probably aim at channels at or around or even slightly above your level without maybe going straight to the superstars, but you don't need a network to do that. You just need an email address and a clear method of communication. So yeah, I think I've made my point. We can get you a much higher CPM than you can alone with Google, but we sure as hell won't promise it. It's interesting because one of the most common things that nearly all networks offer you is a better CPM. They love to say that Google caps your CPM at a certain amount and we can break that cap and we do blah, 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 blah. They love to offer this glimmering presentation that they can get you more money than you can get on your own or just with Google. Can they? Maybe. Do they? In my experience and everyone's experience that I know, no. Why? Because there's no accountability. There's rarely ever, if ever, any solid CPM in the contract. So when you're approached, they may say one thing, but when it comes to signing a digital or paper document that hands you over to their network, in every case I've seen, there's absolutely nothing that forces them to do that. If they do offer a set CPM in the contract, it very rarely, if ever, competes with what you get with Google anyway, let alone once they take their fees out. And I only know of one case where a very well-established and respected YouTuber had a contract with an MCN where they offered a good CPM, and guess what? When the contract ran out, they ditched because it wasn't sustainable. It's not a good business model for them to give you more money than you're already getting, because then they don't get any money. Because to pay you consistently a higher CPM than you're already getting takes a lot of work and a lot of people, and those people need to get paid because they work for the channel thing. So that's why usually the CPM thing is a bit of a gray area. We can show you how to improve your channel in exactly the way that you can do for yourself, without our help. In reality, I've never seen a multi-channel network ever offer a YouTuber any information or developmental help that they couldn't actually attain from themselves or with a few minutes on Google. And here's a little secret. You know who really wants YouTubers to succeed, apart from these wonderful MCNs, of course? YouTube. That's right. YouTube spends millions of dollars on giving free resources to YouTubers. Aside from there being loads of channels and communities and resources specifically made and given to you by YouTube to help you optimize and make the most of your YouTube channel, there's a lot more than that. There are communities and events and panels in real life, real places that people meet up and get together and learn about YouTube. And beyond that, YouTube is building more and more spaces, YouTube spaces around the world. There's one in LA, one in New York, one in Tokyo, one in England, one in Paris, I don't know. There's a lot. And they're building more. And what's the point of them? Only to offer YouTubers with certain tiers of subscribers varying in range so that it's accessible to beginning successful channels around 10,000 subscribers to have free access to studios to film in, to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment that you only need to book and use for the day and then return. for free. MCNs like to try and compete with that and say, yes, we're building a space that you can use and blah, blah, blah if you're on our network. And while in some cases that might be true and be appealing, the problem is you have the same booking system, so you never get a higher priority than you would at YouTube alone anyway, but you're also losing a chunk of your own ad revenue to the network. We only take 25% and you can leave anytime you want. Oh, only 25%. Well, that's not too bad. It's a quarter. It's like the whole thing in like that. There's like that much of the whole it's a quarter. Now that aside, you will find MCNs vary their percentages, and sometimes they also like to offer you very low percentage cuts for themselves with long-term contracts, i.e. we will only take 5 or 10% of your ad revenue if you sign up with us for 1 or 2 years. And then you get all these wonderful things for the whole 2 years, and we only take 5 or 10%. Once again, they like to make things sound prettier than they are, and the reality is 10% of something is still a lot of something. That's 1/10. For every $10 you make, they're minimally taking $1. For what? Now, there are two edges to this blade, because for a lower percentage, you usually sign up for a long-term commitment. But of course, there's always the wonderful alternative of, for only 20% or 15% or whatever it is, you can try us out and leave us at any time. Now, for many people, this is the phrase that does it. When someone says, try it out, and if you don't like it, you can leave at any time, the first thing that someone says to themselves is, what do I have to lose? But most often, and in my own very personal experience, it's not true. They like to put things to keep you there. Even when they tell you you can leave at any time, they like to put barriers in the way to make that as difficult as possible so they get a larger percentage of your revenue for as long as possible before you actually get to leave. I will go into what I'm talking about as far as my own personal experience goes later in this video. Suffice it to say, if something sounds too good to be true, in most cases, it is. So be very careful. So hopefully I've helped demystify that wonderful sales pitch that you may have personally already gotten, because I know that MCNs are very pervasive and they will approach a lot of networks, even if you're just starting off and you've reached maybe 1,000 subscribers after a lot of hard work. Now I'm going to share some of my own personal experiences, but I will, for the sake of anonymity, keep these names private, and not only just because I'm trying to be respectful, but also because with some of them I might have signed things that I have no idea how much I'm screwing myself over if I publicly say anything bad about them. Because the contracts they give people are huge. I mean, think Apple terms and conditions, which they know well and truly that most of the people signing aren't really going to read fully. And when I signed some of these things, I was younger and more naive than I am now. I just took for granted that people or companies genuinely wanted to help each other out and give each other a leg up. So my first experience with an MCN was the biggest one back in the day, and I won't go say any names. Basically, my bad experience with them was fortunate in the sense that I actually didn't sign anything, but it was still a really damning experience as far as my impression of them goes. Now, this was at a time where MCNs weren't highly regulated or really monitored, and what they actually took wasn't really widely known or shared or talked about. Now, my personal experience at the time was that aside from being made to feel very special and feel very flattered, they paid a lot of attention to my content and wanted specifically for my cartoon series Larry, this cartoon about a very small heroic medieval knight with a serious attitude problem, which I'd worked for years on and built an audience around. They had their eyes set on that specifically. They wanted it to be an exclusive show on their network. Now that sounded alright, it sounded pretty cool, especially given how big they were as a network. It made me feel like, hey, if I join these people and make my cartoon with them, it could become the next big thing. It'll get so much attention. What I didn't know is that they were saying this to everyone, and they were just getting as much content as possible. In particular, animated content, which is pretty harmful considering how much work animators do. Now, I am so lucky I didn't sign anything or give them anything, because I may very well have lost the intellectual property that I worked so hard on and put my heart and soul into. Now, even before signing, they were asking for things like episode summaries several episodes down the line and wanting commitments for a certain amount of episodes per year. Things that would be really damaging for me to have committed to, especially because life gets in the way, and at the time it was only 6 months from there that I couldn't pay my mortgage, and if I had have signed all that over and had committed to that, I may have lost my house, let alone the content that I love so much and worked so hard on. Another experience I had later down the line with a different multi-channel network was one in which the salesperson, let's call him Barry, was very communicative and accommodating and answered all of my questions and really made it sound like a fair trade. And the thing that sold me in the end was that phrase, leave at any time. Now, this was actually the first and only MCN I ever signed to, on the provision that I thought I could leave at any time, being promised much higher CPMs and collaborative opportunities and blah, blah, blah. And what actually happened was that as soon as I signed, my ad revenue on YouTube in the analytics section disappeared. I couldn't see where the money was. So I kept trying to contact them and say, where can I see how much money is going in and out and what I'm getting? Barry said, oh, we've migrated you onto our system, so you can log in using this password and username and see the ad revenue. And every time I tried to log in, I couldn't get in. And it turns out they hadn't made the system yet accessible to the less important YouTubers like myself. So I got into annoying mode and contacted everyone I could on their network non-stop until someone finally allowed me to access their system. Keep in mind that this was about a month after I had signed over, so they've had my revenue for about a month. At the point I could actually see what my channel was making, it was about half of what it used to. This was at a really precarious time in my life when I was starting to try and transition into doing YouTube full time. I'd worked so hard to build up my channel to where it was, and my finances were balanced on a razor thin ledge. And at that very moment when I was most vulnerable and unfortunately very naive, I lost that train and I hit a very hard time because I couldn't pay my bills because these people took more money than they ever said that they would take, and I got a lot less, and I'm needing to calm myself down because my language is wanting to be more colourful. Needless to say, immediately when I saw how much money I was losing, which wasn't a huge amount, but at the time, if I couldn't pay my bills, it was a huge amount to me, I immediately wanted out. And I said, hey, guess what? You know the whole no lock-in contract thing? I'm out. Cut me. I'm finished. Give me back my revenue. Leave my channel. Whereupon I got the wonderful email that said something along the lines of, you have to sign this document to be on the 30-day waiting list to leave our network. Oh, yay! So it was bullshit. I'm sorry. Control yourself. Okay. This video is very rapidly turning into the same video I already recorded and didn't release. I'm going to try and control myself, but the point is, it was a bad move. On my part for signing because it was very naive, but on their part because they really took advantage of someone who worked really hard and was really struggling. And you know what? They didn't care. Didn't matter to them. And the interesting thing is, even though after 2 months of getting half the revenue I was hoping to get or used to getting, when I got my AdSense statistics back, I was left with a scar because my AdSense revenue started on the date that I got my YouTube channel back. So I actually can't see my YouTube revenue earlier than the point that I left that network. It's completely gone, and it's like a permanent scar on my YouTube analytics. Another experience I had with a multi-channel network only a year or two ago, this is again sometime after my very bad experience with the other network, was a much more personal and positive interaction than this previous network that was much bigger and screwed me over. I was having conversations with this network that felt, in theory, much more suited to me. It was very animation focused, it was a much smaller community. They really could say that they would give me personal time and attention, and I knew some people who signed with them who were giving the thumbs up and saying they're good. Yeah, they talk to me, they help me out, they do this and that. And I actually got really close to signing with them. But then I stopped and took a breath, counted to 10, and asked myself a very important question, which if you're considering joining an MCN, you really need to ask yourself. And that question is, what can they do for me that I can't do for myself? I'm going to repeat that because it's really important. What can they do for me that I can't do for myself? In most cases, you will find that the answer is absolutely nothing. And I asked them that specifically, and they told me a bunch of stuff that I already knew. And I said, yep, I already knew that, but what can you do for me that I can't do for myself? Again, they fluttered around a few other things that I already knew and was doing already. Then I politely said no thank you, and we went our separate ways. Other than those 3 experiences, I did have that other experience of having a tour around the Baker Studios owned by Schmizny, and again, really nice people, great mentality, people who really feel like they're doing their best and doing a good job for YouTubers. But the reality is, a lot of these people, if not most of these people, if not nearly all of these people who are signed with these networks, especially big networks, don't get anything extra that they would have. If anything, they're just losing 10 to 20% of their ad revenue exponentially for no cause. Now, this brings us to the tail end of our video, and of course, my experience is very biased, and I've had some very negative experiences, and there will be videos out there by some people who maybe have had some positive experiences. Honestly, I know a lot of people who have had very different experiences with lots of different multi-channel networks, and to be completely honest, they're all negative. So I'm going to try and wrap this up with a bit of advice if you are considering a multi-channel network. Are they all terrible, evil, horrible, selfish entities? Yes. I mean, no. I'm just kidding, obviously not. But the problem with multi-channel networks usually stems from the same thing. They all have the same problem when something goes bad, and that comes down to one word, and that word is accountability. If you have a network that is promising very specific things, realistic and attainable things that they can show you, that they can give you, and if you can make them accountable to that, then they may very well be worth considering joining. There are a few things I would recommend. The first would be to negotiate a bit of a try before you buy scenario. Don't sign anything until they show you what it's like to be a part of their network. Get them to work for you and show them how they will work for you before you sign anything. That might mean saying, hey, bring me a couple of brand deals, or include me in a couple of your community events, or do a few things that you offer people on your network. Give them to me as if I was on your network, and then I'll see where I sit. Now, if they are reasonable human beings running the network, that won't be a problem. If they really believe in their product, they will happily show you its worth before getting you to sign anything. The other piece of advice to remember with MCNs is that contracts are not set in stone, and especially naive people who get a contract, there is this bit of a mindset that the piece of paper or the document that they hand you is either signed or not signed. That's not true. Contracts can be negotiated, and if you get a contract, you can actually write on it, scribble a few things out, maybe add in a few conditions of your own, send it back and say, here's my version of the contract, now you tell me what you think. Do try and make it reasonable and don't throw it in their face. If you don't want to sign with them, just don't sign with them. But if you actually are considering it, but it feels a bit unfair, make it feel fair, make them accountable in the contract, and then see what they have to say. Now, to be honest, more times than not, they won't actually talk to you anymore after that. But if they mean business, and if they're sincere, and if they actually can offer you the things that you're asking for that you want out of the deal, then conversations will continue and you may end up with a much better scenario. How can you make an MCN accountable in a contract? Specify things like guaranteed CPMs, perhaps a certain amount of brand opportunities per year or per quarter, and of course specify quality of these things. If you're a fashion channel and they bring you an Xbox One promotion gig, that's obviously not going to fit very well. So even in the contract, you do need to specify that the final say over whether something counts as a branded opportunity lies with you as the content creator, whose integrity is the most important thing with your YouTube channel. You also want to make sure the contract is two ways. Mostly these sorts of contracts add a lot of pressure to the content creator or the YouTuber, meaning that if you breach the contract, you're liable, or you can be kicked out at any point, or you lose a certain amount of whatever. That's got to be two ways. If they don't deliver some of the things that they promise, then they should be ditched. And you should be able to leave the contract or terminate the agreement without any further repercussions. At the end of the day, the unfortunate truth is if you're being a little bit too picky about having a fair contract, they're probably just going to give up to you and walk away to someone more gullible who will just sign happily. And that's okay, because you've saved yourself a lot of pain. As a YouTuber, there may be a fit for you out there somewhere in an MCN, but don't feel like your success depends on it. I have no MCN attached to me, and I honestly don't want to. If you're a salesperson of an MCN watching this and thinking, I can change his mind, nope. And the reality is, if you're a YouTuber and you have a large audience or it's growing very rapidly, one of the best avenues for you may not be with an MCN, it actually may be with an agent or a manager, in exchange for which you get the one-on-one attention and you get branded gigs that they bring you, but they only take a cut of what they give you. and they don't touch your ad revenue. And that's a much better dynamic because it means they're only getting paid for the work that they actually do, and you actually gain more than what you would without them. And that's the whole point. And I think MCNs are trying to be that. And it's funny watching MCNs evolve because the main pitch that I've described will evolve, and it may not necessarily be that today or even in 5 years. And the MCN's focuses do seem to be shifting somewhat into being able to provide studios or funding for productions and whatnot. But for the mass media marketplace, for people like you and I who aren't PewDiePie or Jenna Marbles, usually we slip under the radar. And often we don't get that sort of a deal. And that's okay. And that doesn't mean that you can't be in that place one day. But in order to even get close to there, you need to be a wise business person and take yourself seriously and don't sell yourself short. I hope this video has been helpful to some of you who have considered the pros and cons of MCNs. It's a little bit different to my normal content, but it is something that as an artist who deals with a lot of artists who have a lot of pain that they deal with after having signed with an MCN or getting a bad deal, I feel like it's really important to have this conversation. It's the reason I'm remaking this video in a way that I feel will be a little more presentable to you than the other one I made and didn't release. And no, you can't see that because it's a little bit sweary. That's it for now, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. While you're here, make sure to subscribe for more quality content from Draw with Jazza, including terrible accents and dramatic representations like this. Over here on your right, you can see some relevant links such as related videos and some playlists you may find interesting. And of course, if you want to support Jazza, make sure to go down there to the shop where he has some fantastic ebooks and digital products like custom Photoshop brushes and photo reference packs, and the list goes on. But you don't have to do that, of course, because I'm not just trying to sell you stuff. I'm your friend. You can trust me. Give me your soul. Thanks for watching. I'll see you around, buddy.